Okay guys, so today is our last lesson on pronouns. And so for today's lesson, we're going to talk about something that is very often confused when people are writing. And so they write one thing, but they mean another, and then it just all makes a big mess. So the title for today's notes is Possessive Pronouns and Contractions. Now, we already did a similar lesson when we were talking about helping and linking verbs, and how we remember we talked about there, and your, and your, and you chose the correct one. Well, today we're going to be talking mostly about possessive pronouns and then using is as in a contraction. So, as a review, possessive pronouns show ownership. So just like possessive nouns, they show ownership, but the difference is that they also, so and takes the place of a possessive noun. So instead of saying Miss Folis's bag, I would say my bag. Remember, examples of possessive pronouns are my and mine. So this is the regular possessive pronoun that must be followed by a noun. And then mine, which can stand alone. My bag is over there, or that bag over there is mine. We also have your and yours. That is your bag. That bag is yours. His, which doesn't change. You can say that is his bag, and that bag is his. Her and hers. You can say that is her bag, or that bag is hers. Its, which is another one that doesn't change. This is if you're talking about an object owning something or an animal that you don't know the gender. If I'm saying that if I'm talking about the bag that belongs to a game, I would say that is its bag, or that bag is its. And then the plurals, I have our or ours. That is our bag. That bag is ours. And their and theirs. That is their bag. That bag is theirs. Now, possessive pronouns never, you can see right here, never have an apostrophe. We can see all of the possessive pronouns we know right here. We see that none have apostrophes. So if you're trying to say that is its bag, you would never have it apostrophe s, because you'd be saying something different. The same with hers. You would never have her apostrophe s. Now with nouns, we know that all possessive nouns have to have an apostrophe. Possessive pronouns, however, never have an apostrophe. But this is where it gets confusing. It's because subject pronouns, which remember those are I, you, he, she, and it, we, and they. Those are the subject pronouns. Remember, they can take the place of the subject in a sentence. These are the pronouns that do the actions. Are often used with verbs to form contractions. So we do often see these subject pronouns with an apostrophe. That is because they are used with a verb, not to show possession. If you see a pronoun with an apostrophe, it's because it's being combined with a verb. It is not showing possession. So, contractions always, we've learned about this, contractions always have apostrophes because the apostrophe takes the place of the letters that have been taken out. So, put that in your brain right now. Possessive pronouns never have apostrophes. However, subject pronouns that are used with a verb to form a contraction always have apostrophes because contractions always have apostrophes. These examples of subject pronouns used to make contractions are, are things like you'll, which is a contraction of you will, you'd, Y-O-U apostrophe D, which is a contraction of you would or you had, we've, W-E apostrophe V-E, we have, there, which we learned is a contraction for they are, she's, which is not, she's is a contraction of she is, not a possessive form. We see we don't even use she's to show possession. We use her or hers. She'd is a contraction of she would or she had. I'm is a contraction of I am. I'll is I will. I've is I have. I'd is I had. This is another one. This is important. So she's and she is, you do need to write. It's, I-T apostrophe S does not mean that it has something. It means it is. That is where that word gets very, very confusing. It's with an apostrophe means it is. It's without an apostrophe means that it owns something. Other ones are, let's see, those are the only ones that we can sometimes get confused. We would not use she's or he's because that means he is. We wouldn't ever say you apostrophe S because we don't say you is. We wouldn't use they apostrophe S because we wouldn't say they is. So she's, it's, and he's with apostrophes are where it gets confusing. Those are not showing possession. Those are contractions for she is, it is, and he is. It's is the one that you really want to pay attention to because if you're trying to show ownership, you will not have an apostrophe. If you want to show it is, you will. Now, make sure you have all this because I have one more point to write, but I can't fit it on the board. So, I mean, I can, but it would be kind of hard to fit right there. So go ahead and make sure you have all of that. Pause the video if you need to because I have one more point to write that will really, really help you when you're trying to decide which word is correct. I just can't fit it on the board right now. Okay, so the last point I want to make before we get to the guided practice is to choose the correct word, so to choose the correct word, think about whether you are combining words, which would mean you would need a contraction. So think about whether you are combining words, which would be using a contraction, or trying to show possession. So are you trying to combine words into a contraction, or are you trying to show possession or that somebody owns something? For example, it's time to go. You are combining it and is. It is time to go would work just as well as IT apostrophe S. However, if you're trying to say, let's see, you're talking about a bird, that, so we know it's time to go would sound just as well if we said it is time to go. So that's how we know we are supposed to have an apostrophe. However, if I'm talking about a bird, that is its nest. It would make 0 sense to say that is it is nest. So we know we're trying to show possession. We're trying to show that the bird, which is what we're talking about as it, owns the nest. Whereas here, we are combining the words it and is into a contraction. So that's what you need to make sure of. You use an apostrophe when it works to say it is. You do not use an apostrophe when you're just trying to show possession. So go ahead and right now get out your packet for Tuesday, May 5th. Turn past the reading and turn to the guided practice. The first page of the guided practice, it has 121 at the bottom, and we will do that together. Okay, so before you begin, make sure that you see page 121 down at the bottom of your independent practice, and then let's read the bullet points at the top together. The first bullet point says, it's, their, and your are possessive pronouns. We see that there are no apostrophes in those words, and we know that possessive pronouns never have apostrophes. It's, their, and your are contractions for it is, they are, and you are. We do see apostrophes with these pronouns, so we know that they have to be contractions. Also, their with an apostrophe and their, the possessive pronoun, are not spelled the same, and neither are your with an apostrophe and your is the possessive pronoun. Be careful not to confuse possessive pronouns with contractions that sound the same. So let's read the directions. Read each sentence below, then circle the correct word in parentheses to complete each sentence. So what we're going to do as we go through is we're going to look at what the words are. Then, no matter what, we're going to replace it with the contraction, with the words that make up the contraction form. If it makes sense by using it is, they are, and you are, that means we use the contraction. If it does not make sense, that means we have to use the possessive pronoun form. So number one, we see that we have their, so we're going to say they are when we get to it to make sure it makes sense. If we don't protect the coral reefs, they are likely to die. That makes sense, so that means we are going to use the contraction. We're not saying that they own likely to die. That doesn't make sense. So we have to say they are or their. Number two, we have your, so we're going to replace it with you are as we read. If you visit a coral reef, you are sure to see many wonderful creatures. That makes sense. We're not saying anybody owns sure to see many wonderful creatures, so we're going to use the contraction. Number three, again, we have your, so let's replace it with you are. When you go, remember to bring you are snorkel. Well, you're not a snorkel. Nobody is a snorkel. So that means we use your, the possessive version, to say that you own the snorkel. Number 4, we have its, so let's replace it with it is. It is important to understand that corals are living things. That makes sense, so we're going to use the contraction. We're not saying that it owns important to understand. That doesn't make sense, so we're using the contraction. Number 5, we have their, so let's replace it with they are. They are lives depend on many things being in place. That doesn't make sense. So we're going to use the possessive. We're saying that corals own the lives. So they own the lives. So their lives depend on many things. Number 6, we have its, so we're going to replace it with it is to see if it makes sense. Because of all the tiny spaces in the Great Barrier Reef, it is a great place for a fish to hide. That makes sense, so we're going to use the contraction. Number 7, we have its again, so we're going to say it is. It is off the coast of Australia. Again, that makes sense, so we'll use the contraction. Number 8, we have your, so let's replace it with you are. Surely you are amazed that the Great Barrier is 1,250 miles long. That makes sense, so we'll use the contraction. Number 9, imagine all the sea life, we have its, so let's say it is. Imagine all the sea life that lives in all it is cracks and holes. That doesn't make sense. So we're going to use the possessive because we're using it to replace the Great Barrier, and the Great Barrier has the cracks and holes. Number 10, we have your, so let's replace it with you are. You are going to enjoy your visit to the reef. That does make sense, so we're going to use the contraction. Number 11, we have its. So let's use it is to see if it makes sense. You don't have to dive far to see it is beauty. That doesn't make sense because we're saying it, as in the reef, has beauty. If this word was beautiful, you don't have to dive far to see it is beautiful. That would make sense, but you can't say that it is and then another noun. Number 12, don't forget you are flippers. Again, you're not flippers, so we have to use the possessive because you own the flippers. Number 13, we have their, so let's replace it with they are. Fish stay in they are own groups. That doesn't make sense, so we're going to use the possessive because fish have the groups. Number 14, the mother stays with it is young. Well, we're not saying that the mother is young. We're saying that the mother has young, so we need to use the possessive pronoun. Okay, so always, whenever you're trying to decide if you need a possessive pronoun or a contraction that sounds exactly like a possessive pronoun, make sure that if you use the words that make up the contraction, make sure they make sense. If they don't, then you need to use the possessive pronoun. Remember, possessive pronouns never, ever, ever have apostrophes. However, contractions always have apostrophes. Go ahead and turn to the back and we'll do that page together. Okay, so now you should be on the back of the guided practice we just did. It should have 122 on the bottom left corner. 123 is for later, that's the independent practice. Okay, so before we begin, let's read these bullet points. It's, their, and your are possessive pronouns. We see this is the same thing that it said before. It's means that it's owned by it. Their means it's owned by them. Your means it's owned by you. It's, their, and your, with apostrophes, are contractions for it is, they are, and you are. We have an extra one that said the word there, T-H-E-R-E, means in that place. It sounds just like there and there. So what we're going to do on this page is similar to what we did before, but now we're also going to add there is T-H-E-R-E to make sure that we don't make any mistakes. So these are all called homophones. Remember, homophones are words that sound the same but are spelled differently and mean different things. So we're going to write the homophone that correctly completes each sentence. So number 1, we have their. So are we saying that something is owned by them? Are we trying to shorten the words they are, or are we saying that something is in that place? So, number 1, go to a coral reef and explore the warm, clear waters there. Are we saying something owns something? We're not. We didn't say what they owned, and we know there, if it doesn't have an S, cannot stand alone. There's no noun after it, so we know it can't be there. It would not make sense if we said, go to a coral reef and explore the warm, clear waters they are, so it can't be that one. We could say, go to a coral reef and explore the warm, clear waters in that place. So that means the correct choice is there, spelled like T-H-E-R-E. Number 2, we have its and its. Are we trying to say that it owns something or that it is something? Let's try like we did before, and we'll use it is to see if that makes sense. It is not uncommon to find corals in many bright colors. Well, that makes sense. So that means we are using the contraction it's for it is. Number 3, again, we're trying to say, does it belong to them? Are we saying they are, or is it in a certain place? Corals belong to a family of animals, and blank relatives include jellyfish and anemones. Well, let's try they are. We can eliminate that pretty quickly. Corals belong to a family of animals, and they are relatives include jellyfish and anemones. That doesn't make sense. So we're not trying to say they are. If the sentence ended there, then maybe we can use it. Or if this said of instead, then it would make sense. Let's try in that place and see. Let's try the words in that place and see if it makes sense. Corals belong to a family of animals, and in that place, relatives include jellyfish and anemones. That doesn't make sense either. We're not talking about a location, but we are talking about how the corals have relatives that include jellyfish and anemones. So we're using the possessive. Okay, now number 4, we'll do just what we did in number 2 and say it is and see if that makes sense. It is even possible to find corals growing on shipwrecks. That makes sense, so we are using the contraction, it apostrophe S. Number 5, we'll do the same thing. Does it is work? A sponge eats by pumping water through tiny holes in it is body. That does not make sense, so we have to use the possessive because we're saying the sponge, it has a body. Number 6, we're doing there again. So first we'll try they are. If that doesn't work, we'll try in that place. If neither of them work, then we'll use the possessive and we'll see what they have. The bottom of the ocean is a busy place, and many creatures live, they are. That doesn't make sense. So let's try in that place. The bottom of the ocean is a busy place, and many creatures live in that place. That does make sense. So we know it's supposed to be T-H-E-R-E. Also, we see that there is no noun after the blank, so it definitely can't be there. Now we have your and your. Let's use you are and see if that makes sense. Which one is you are favorite? The sea stars, the sand dollars, or the spiny lobsters? Well, that doesn't make sense, so it has to be the possessive, your, because you have a favorite. Last one, number 8. Again, we'll try they are. If that doesn't work, we'll try in that place. If that doesn't work, it probably means it's possessive, and we'll figure out what they have. No matter which one is your favorite, they are all important to life under the sea. Well, that makes sense, so we don't even have to go any further. We know it's supposed to be the contraction there for they are. Okay, that's it for the guided practice. That means you're on your own for the independent practice. Go ahead and work on that right now. If you have questions, please don't guess. FaceTime me or Skype me. Some of you on these English have checked your grades because you're just guessing instead of trying. You really have got to try. If you aren't sure after you've tried as hard as you can, then you need to reach out to me so that I can help you. Don't just guess. It is not helpful to you, and your grade suffers from it. If you are just guessing, you are not learning. You need to ask. Okay, that's it. Go ahead and work on the independent practice now.